Hey, my Emo brothers, back again in for a quick one. For whatever reason, there's a lot of so-called anti-red pill rhetoric going around. And the old saying of, if you fail to learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. And it seems that's what's actually going on. Our detractors or dissenters, our blue pill navigators, for lack of a better term, have failed to learn from history. Any perusal of red pill history, or even MGTOW, its more radical form of red pill history, would teach them. Because 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago, when I actually learned about MGTOW and started following it and started listening to the philosophy, MGTOW was very small. And the idea of the red pill was rather small. A few blogs, a few contributors here and there. Even the pickup artists weren't considered completely red pill. So 2011 when it first started, it was actually no more than maybe 1,000 people. And outside of the community that it existed in, nobody really heard of it, especially MGTOW. If you weren't inside the community, if you weren't online and you weren't on YouTube, you didn't search for it, you would never even know what MGTOW was. And this is just 6 years ago. And when it did start to grow and certain government agencies found out that this was actually a thing, they wanted to strangle the baby before it got grown. Let's snuff it off before it gets widely known. So that was during the Elliot Rodger fiasco in Santa Barbara. So they tried to at first blame Elliot Rodger on red pill pickup artists, and that failed. And then they tried to claim that Elliot Rodger was a MGTOW. That also failed. But in the interim, what happened was it actually spread the idea of the red pill, actually spread the idea of MGTOW. So MGTOW started to grow and people couldn't figure out why. And then the BBC came in and tried to portray MGTOW and the red pill as disgruntled, man-hating men. That also failed because as men investigated it, and people who investigated and found out what it was, they started to align themselves with the ideology, with the philosophy, because it was part of their experience. So when that failed, the feminists and the government and the detractors and the blue pill world tried to convince men to stay away from MGTOW and the red pill by doing what? By saying it was the same thing as the feminists. You can actually go back and look at Barbarossa's video that's got to be at least 5 years old, talking about MGTOW same as feminists. That was a talking point. So as the red pill grows and as this economy starts to shrink and more men, especially young men, are getting aligned earlier and earlier with the truth, or what we call the red pill truth, they're trying the same tactics. Now, the young man up in Canada, who is now called part of the incel community, is trying to be aligned with MGTOW and the red pill, just as Elliot Rodger was 5 years before. And now an anti-feminist movement like the red pill, like MGTOW, like the MRA. Keep forgetting that the MRA, men's rights activists, is a red pill community, is a political wing of the red pill community. The dating coaches, which are pickup artists, are part of the red pill community, even though we think they're purple pill. But that's a different discussion. They've always considered the PUAs as purple pill, half in, half out. But that's a different discussion. We can go back to the MGTOW versus the PUA wars back in 2011, which has probably never gone away. That's all it's doing right now is refreshing itself. Like I say, history's just repeating itself. But now we have this new wave of we call anti-red pill 3.0, just like you have this so-called manosphere 3.0. They're doing the exact same thing. They can't quite align the young men going off and doing harmful things to people and killing the red pill community, because it's not going to die. Men aren't accepting it. And secondly, now they're trying the exact same thing, which they're calling the red pill feminism, 4.0. So, I was perusing the YouTube streets and I stopped in the ear hustle at the door and I hear that Red Pill is feminism 4.0. And I said, where have I heard that before? That is the same as the feminist argument. When MGTOW was a fledgling philosophy, a fledgling ideology. And the people that are purporting this, again, not for the first time, this is the third time, again, have not learned from history. They are embarking on a journey of insanity. Why do I say that? What's Einstein's famous quote? What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Bad mouthing Red Pill, bad mouthing MGTOW, bad mouthing SYSBM, ITMOR, what have you. Bad mouthing it is not going to do anything. ITMOR was a fledgling idea in 2015 when 4 men, I can tell you 4 men because I know who started it. When 4 men, and I was number 4, started an ITMOR idea. ITMOR led to SYSBM, or Save Yourself Black Man, or Escape Black Man, and a host of other things. And it has grown. It has multiplied itself. So the question is, if trying to discredit it doesn't work, and trying to scare people away from it doesn't work, and it still spreads despite everything you do, and the more that you badmouth it, the more that you spread it. And the thing is, you're wondering, why is that? Yeah, why is that? Why is it every attempt at bad-mouthing the Red Pill, bad-mouthing MGTOW, bad-mouthing any one of these Red Pill ideologies doesn't work? It just does the opposite. Because a lot of people use modern philosophy. They forget the classics. They leave them out. Philosophy is a continuum, and new ideas have to be grounded in the old, because the old is a continuum of hundreds of thousands of years of wisdom passed down from one generation to the next. And you can't be so silly as to push it aside like what you think is going to usurp something that has been learned over many iterations. And one old story that had probably been passed down by word of mouth and actually written down in the Roman New Testament is the parable of the sower. And in ancient times, there was a parable of what we call the sower. And what a sower was a person that spread the seed. They didn't have the modern machines that we have now that actually dig holes and dig rows for those plants to be planted in, carefully manicured. It wasn't that way back in ancient times when the sower was there. You basically took a bag of seed and you cast it about. And as the parable of the sower would say, is that there were portions of the ground that were too dry and there was no water, and the seeds would dry out and die. Or there wasn't enough, there was too much shade and the seedlings couldn't grow. Or he would cast the seed in a place where there's too many weeds, thickets of weeds and thorns, and the plants would get choked out. But some of the seeds, enough of the seeds would land on what we call fertile ground as you cast them about. And those seeds would find fertile soil, they would get implanted into the soil, and they would grow up healthy and firm and actually pass it on to the next generation. But most people that are learned forget about philosophy. Philosophy is nothing more than the study of how nature and human psychology actually work. What the Red Pill is, and the reason that the Red Pill ideology is growing and growing so fast is because it's finding fertile soil. And if the Red Pill is finding fertile soil and it's growing exponentially, and you can look on any chart, look up the Red Pill, look at MGTOW, or any one of the numerous terms or iterations that the Red Pill takes, and you'll find exponential growth. Why is that? Because there's fertile soil and lots of it. And everybody that is pro Red Pill is not the only sower. Also, the anti-Red Pill detractors are also sowers. Instead of them trying to find fertile ground to throw the seeds on, they're trying to find unfertile ground to actually choke off the idea. But as they're casting about the anti-rhetoric, what they're doing is they're spreading red pill seeds. And red pill seeds are finding fertile ground and growing in spite of their efforts. So what they're doing is actually backwards. How do you keep something from growing? Parable of the sower. You take away the fertile ground. You take away the reason for it growing in the first place. Because talking about it is spreading seeds, which is why the BBC couldn't kill it, which is why the Canadian Broadcasting Company couldn't kill it, which is why the New York Times couldn't kill it, which is why the movies couldn't kill it, which is why all the anti-red pill rhetoric, whether it's against pickup artists, whether against MGTOW, which is a very hated ideology, extremely hated ideology, still to this day, extremely hated ideology. Why it still grows. So much so that there's money in it. And why men are abandoning the former places where they were, the former organizations where they were, because they're looking for fertile ground. So the anti-red pill detractors or opponents keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results instead of doing the one thing that will work. You get rid of the fertile ground. It's obvious. How do you get rid of the fertile ground? You have a redress of grievances. You take away the reason for people to follow the ideology in the first place, which you probably can't. Because to do so would mean you have to brainwash 100 million women to throw off their feminist thinking. The problem is not the men. The problem is the women have been brainwashed to think feminist. And the problem is that the men who have been trained to think feminist are finding out that it does not work with their biology. It does not work with reality. Same thing that the women are finding out. What they have been taught does not work in the real world. It doesn't work with their biology because the men, number one, they don't like it. The results are the kind of men that this system is turning out, and the men do not like it because it doesn't work. So the men are leaving. They're not cooperating. And the women desperately need the men to cooperate for this thing to work. Because you can no longer brainwash the men because they're not little boys. You're trying to shame them into accepting their brainwashing, which doesn't work. Even with the one blowjob away theory, which does hold credence. It's like going back to your ex. It only works temporarily, which is why a lot of people do not like going back to an ex-lover because the heart knows no time. The same situation that caused you to break up will come back again in the cycle, only faster. Because now you'll recognize the signs and leave immediately. And the second time you leave, you won't go back. See, now right now, women have an opportunity, and it's a small one, an opportunity to show a different face, to actually have a redress of grievances. But what's happening is they're actually falling back on the same ideology, the same circumstances, the same talking points that caused the men to leave in the first place. And the few men that are stopping to listen to your side, to listen to what was happening, or listen to reason, will find out that the same thing will happen all over again, but they'll recognize it faster. And this time they'll leave, and they'll leave for good. And the anti-red pill opponents, whose hearts may be in the right place, I'm assuming that their hearts are in the right place, that they're doing the right thing for the right reason, or think that they are not doing women in the community a service, a favor, a solid, using these tactics. One, they won't work, and two, they're going to try to sell men a bill of goods that they can't deliver on. And the backlash is going to be double what it was the first time. I can guarantee you that. And the growth of the red pill, the growth of MGTOW, the growth of SYSBM is actually going to accelerate instead of slow. How do I know? Been here before. This is not new. The tactics are not new. The rhetoric is not new. And the amount of insanity with this tactic is off the charts. You can't be using old talking points in the information age. It's absolutely absurd, because that game will come to an end and right quick. The only way out of this particular situation is redress of grievances. You're going to have to come up with a better deal. You can't sell an old product that has not been efficient or sufficient, which is the reason men left in the first place, try to sell it again as a new and improved. It's not going to work. And you're doing women a disservice by trying to convince them that this tactic will work on men, because they're going to turn a deaf ear, and you're going to insult their intelligence, and you're going to make them mad, and you're going to harden their heart, which I can already see forming. Redress of grievances makes the people that may have not been your friends your friends. Trying to abuse them into accepting something that they don't want or need or can use makes them your enemies. Not learning from the past makes you doomed to repeat it. Trying to do the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is insanity. Is the path of insanity, is the path of foolishness. The red pill was not created out of a whim, out of a marketing scheme, out of a willy-nilly idea. The red pill was not even created. The red pill was actually adopted by philosophy that was already there, that a philosophy that came out of necessity. You cannot defeat Mother Nature. You cannot defeat necessity. At the end of the day, what you need to do and how you need to move is going to be dictated by facts on the ground. You can't change the facts on the ground. Basically, you're wasting your time. And the red pill ideology will actually grow. Why? Because it's fertile ground. Because it's a necessity. Because it is the only way out for Western man. We win or die. Other folks have other options. With that, I'm going to jump off here. This is BGS out, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.